Welcome to FO Podcasts. With me is Edmund Ghareeb. He has been an academic in all of the universities of Washington, D.C., Georgetown, American, George Washington. He is an author who's written in English, French, and Arabic. He's an intellectual in the purest sense of the term, from the Middle East, from the Levant, and it is a great honor for us to have him here. Thank you, Edmund.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Edmund, you sent me very kindly a book of Palestinian poetry, Enemy of the Sun, and I leafed through some of the poems, and they're very poignant. Tell us a bit about how you published the book, how you came up with the title, and the poetry in the book as well.
You know, there's a long story to this. This is a book that has been resurrected in a way. The first edition of this book came out in 1970. I was just starting to study here in Washington, Georgetown, and I went back to Lebanon to visit family, and I had met a student at Georgetown who was ahead of me, but we became, acquainted friends. And when he knew that I was in the region, he contacted me and he said, "Why don't you come and visit me in Jordan?" So I went there, and while I was there, we heard that Arafat was there,
And you mean Yasser Arafat?
Exactly.
Once upon a time, who led the Fatah movement and was the head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and has this iconic photograph of shaking hands with Yitzhak Rabin in the White House in those fabled days when everyone thought there might be peace.
Absolutely. And so I used to write for a student publication and also for the collegiate press service, which was like a UPI or AP for the college newspapers. And so I said to my friend, "Do you think, we can try to meet with Arafat? Is there a chance?" I said, "I don't think so, but I don't know." But he helped me connect with the former mayor of Jerusalem. And we went and visited him and told him who I was a student and all of, and what my work. And he said, "I'll try." Well, we got an interview. The interview, surprisingly, it received a lot of attention in the region and here even.
Which year are we talking about?
1969.
Wow, 1969, 1 year after the great protests, student protests in the US.
Exactly. So
this is a time when the Vietnam War is on. This is a time when you've just had 2 years ago the 1967-60 war. This is a time.
67, Vietnam.
Yes.
Demonstrations. I was here when they had the demonstration. The end was at the bridge, and the head of the demonstration was close just past the White House.
Wow.
There were so many people at that time.
And Richard Nixon has just taken over in January. So this is a historic time.
So that's what we did. So we got that. And the day before I was supposed to leave, my friend called, says, "Are you free tonight?" I said, "I don't have anything. Why don't?" He said, "Why don't we go to dinner? And then there is going to be a reading of Palestinian poetry, mostly Palestinian poets who are still in the Green Line in Israel." I said, "Fine, let's go." So we went, and
were they in prison at that point?
Some of them were in prison.
Okay.
Yeah, some of them were out. So we went to the readings, and they were read by some academics and some even students who were in Jordan. And I liked some of the poetry. So when I came back, I translated in the beginning, and then 2-3 more later by people like Samih al-Qasim, Mahmoud Darwish, and published them in student papers. And I got a call about a month after that from a professor at the University of Massachusetts, Dr. Nasir Aruri, and he said that, "I saw your translations. I'm translating some Palestinian poetry. How about if we work together and publish a book?" So I said, "That sounds great." So we worked published a number enough to do a book, to get a book out.
Mhm.
We got also mostly Palestinian poets, but we also got some Syrian and an Iraqi poet, but mostly they were Palestinians. But then once we finished it, we started contacting publishers. 12 publishers turned us down. Then the last one we tried Beacon Press.
Mhm.
Beacon Press, the literary editor, the man who we were in touch with, said that, it sounds interesting. He sent a letter afterward, and we have to think of a way how to promote this work.
So 13 proved to be a lucky number.
And it didn't. So about 4 weeks after we got the first letter, we got a letter. Sorry, it doesn't fit. So I called him. I said, Carl, what's going on? What happened? He said, orders came from above. So we said, fine. So I said, look, we're desperate. We've tried so far 13 different publishers. He said, look, you're studying in Georgetown. There's a press there called Drum and Spear Press. This is a press that was started by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, headed by Stokely Carmichael, who later became known as Kwame Ture. But they focus mostly on African issues and African American issues.
Very interesting.
But he said, you have nothing to lose, try them. So I went there after about a month when here. So I went to them and found out where they were and asked for one of the managers there. And I talked to him. He said, sorry, but we only publish things about Africa and African Americans. We don't do anything. I said, fine. They had a small bookstore next to them where they sold some of their books and publication. So I went there taking a look, and then somebody comes and says, how can I help you? I said, I told him what the story was. And he said, that unfortunately we only publish these things. So I said, look, you and the Palestinians have a lot of things in common. The Palestinians, are living under an apartheid system. South Africa is still under apartheid. Yes, the civil rights movement has made a great deal of progress in the United States. Nevertheless, there are some areas where they're still almost treated as second grade citizens. He laughed and he said, send me the manuscript. I sent it to him. 5 weeks later, we're going to publish it. They published 10,000 copies and sold the copy for $2.50.
In those days, $2.50 was a lot of money.
Relatively speaking, you're absolutely right.
This is before Nixon takes the U.S. off the gold standard. In those days, the dollar was linked to gold.
Exactly. I mean, it's amazing when you think of it. So,
exactly. And now the dollar is worth nothing, and other currencies are not even worth the paper they're printed on.
So we got few reviews in some of the academic journals, not much of the media. There were maybe 2-3 stories about it, and that was it. But within about 2.5 years, the book sold out. And they said this was their best-selling book.
Ooh la la.
And then they went out of business.
And was it titled Enemy of the Sun?
Enemy of the Sun, because we chose a poem by Samih al-Qasim, who's a prominent Palestinian poet, who was a leftist. He was spent a bit of time in jail, but he also was a very vibrant, very lively poet, and he was open-minded, on many. And I liked the poem. I translated that poem, Enemy of the Sun. And we liked the title, so we used it.
Very quickly, let me stop you. For our audience who thinks of Palestinians now living under Hamas, which is an Islamist radical Islamist organization, it is important for them to remember that there was a time when socialism was very powerful in the Arab world. Gamal Abdel Nasser was socialist. The Syrians initially under the senior Assad, the Hafiz al-Assad, the Ba'athist party was socialist. The Iraqi Ba'athist Party, led by Saddam Hussein, was also socialist. The Palestinian Liberation Organization was also socialist. And there may have been economic delusions on the part of the leftists, but the one thing common to all these movements was they were not as religiously exclusive and ethnically exclusive as they are now. In fact, the Palestinians, their best intellectuals, Edward Said, Hanan Ashrawi, who was their spokeswoman, they were Christians. So things were very different in those days. And Edmund, you come from Christian roots in Lebanon as well. So it was far more ecumenical at that time.
That's true. That's a very good point that you mentioned. And also the fact that, look what happened in Iraq, for example.
Yes.
Iraq, you had 1.5 million Christians.
Yes.
Before the fall of the regime.
Before Saddam Hussein fell.
Was overthrown. Yeah. Today, if there are 300,000 left, that's many. That's more than some people think. Some people say it's somewhere between 200 and 250,000.
And this is not even to talk about the Yazidis and others.
Yeah. I mean, the Yazidis were probably the worst. Yeah. They were dealt with in the worst way. Yeah. And then probably with the rise of ISIS, with the rise of
Islamic State and all of
radical movement. But these people were open, and they were also, some of them, they were close to even some Jewish intellectuals who were also on the left.
Yeah.
We remember many of the early groups who led Israel also had a socialist.
This is what people don't realize, that Israel began as a socialist country. The kibbutz, which the plural of which is kibbutzim, were basically collectives, agricultural collectives, and they came from the European social tradition. That's why you have proportional representation in Israel, and that tradition runs strong to this day.
That's right. And this is one of the interesting things. One of the poets, actually, that we have, Rashid Hussein, was married to a Jewish woman. So there were those. They were very open. Many, I wouldn't say every single one of them, but most of these people were very open-minded. So they felt that their struggle was also part of an international struggle.
Understood.
For example, they sympathized with the Vietnamese. They sympathized. There are poets who wrote about how Black Americans, indigenous Americans, the Red Indians, as they are described by some people. But that was something that's very important. I mean, these poets, by the way, historically speaking, Palestinian poets were not as well known in the Arab world as Lebanese poets, Syrian, Egyptian, Iraqi poets, and even some from some other areas. But in fact, they were very much influenced by the new movements. That one of them that emerged in the United States, the Mahjar writers, people like Gibran, Amin Rihani, Mikhail Naimi. These people also did not influence only the Arab American community, but they influenced the Arab community back home. And that was influenced because poetry, by the way, in Arabic, as I'm sure it's in a number of other languages, it's almost has magic. It's a magical. And the poet was in many ways many things. He was the defender of the honor of the tribe, if they were in a tribal society, or of the country, of the culture. He was, in many ways, also the person who promoted and praised his society and criticized the enemies. They were the people who spread, in many ways, the common culture, in all the way from, let's say, Morocco almost to the Gulf. There is this culture. Poetry is read all over. And the Palestinian poets were influenced by the Nahda, or the Renaissance movement that began to emerge in the middle of the 19th century in Lebanon, in Syria, in Egypt. And that influenced also some of the Palestinian poets. And they began to write basically, and then came 1948. 48 had a great impact on them.
48 is the creation of Israel.
The creation of Israel. And so that was one of the main things that motivated them. But they believed that they need to express in a way, the frustration, the anger. You see in their writings many things. You see love, you see anger, you see frustration, you see call for brotherhood and equality, and they vary, of course, from poet to poet. So some of them became very well known internationally, like Mahmoud Darwish, or to a certain extent, Anis al-Qasim, and they were translated to many other languages, and some not well known. So what happened after that? The story is that we tried to get the book published again, and again we had the same problem.
Again, you got the runaround.
We got the runaround, and then later,
How many publishers this time?
only about 5 or 6 of them. After a while, we said that's enough, And then suddenly, I get a call from a professor at Tufts. He used to be the head of the African Studies Department and African American Department. He says he was writing an article about the relationship between Palestinians and Africa and African American, and he wanted to talk about the book "Enemy of the Sun" and its effect, its impact. And then he said, I said, but this book has been. I told him this book been out of print almost 45 years ago. And he said, well, I'll tell you when I get back. So when I get there. So when he came here, I invited him to lunch. I said, what's the story? Yes, I'll be happy to talk to you about the issue. But he said, you don't know? I said, what is it I don't know? He said, George Jackson, one of the leaders of the Black Panthers, was killed in jail. And when they sent his effects to his family, he had written 2 books while he was in jail. And he had about 100 books or thereabout. They sent them to his family. Among those papers and books, they found 2 poems. One of them is called "Enemy of the Sun" in his handwriting. So they basically thought he wrote that poem, and it was published in a number of papers, black papers in the United States. And that got the book a lot of interest in the book again. And
initially there was confusion as to whether he had written it.
Exactly, they thought he wrote it.
Exactly, there was
and
confusion.
In a sense, that's what's in part. It shows that how close sometimes for some of the Palestinians and some African Americans, how close their struggles were. That there were a lot of similarities, commonality, in a sense. And he corrected it. He had read the book. And he contacted the family and
the professor.
The professor.
Yeah.
And
what was his name?
Told people. Greg Thomas.
Greg Thomas.
And he is the one who wrote the preface to the new book.
Wonderful. He's still a professor or retired?
He's a professor. He's now a professor at Howard.
I see.
And so but then a woman who happened to be originally from Washington, worked for SNCC, for this drum and spear. Her father was a butler at the White House and had introduced her to Helen Thomas, the very well-known journalist. And she was a professor and a poet. And she wrote an article about the book. She interviewed me and said that this book should be published. And she said, this book, if you can find it, the last copy sold for $500.
How much did you make?
Nothing. Zero. I got 50 copies of the original book. That was it.
You can sell all of them for $500.
And I wish I had them left.
You gave them away.
I bought a copy for $200.
Oh, really?
I went to a
bookstore. Of your own book? Of your own book?
Of my own book. They were selling it for $250.
Oh, dear.
And they, someone wanted to do a story about it.
Yeah.
And so I only had 2 copies left, so I wasn't going to. So I went and found. Anyway, and they said this book should be reissued. And so they contacted some of the other people and helped me connect with the publisher of basically 7 Stories Press. And so we went back and forth a little bit. But ultimately they agreed. I told them I would like to add some new poems. We added something like close to 30 poems. And they published it, and here it is.
Excellent. So tell us a bit about the poetry you've selected. Obviously, you feel very strongly for the Palestinian cause. You've been associated with it for decades. Um, so, what were the overriding themes for you?
I think the main theme, first of all, is that you have basically of people who wanted to have their rights recognized. The Palestinian people's rights were ignored, unfortunately, first by the British, and who made a promise actually to the Balfour Declaration,
1917.
1917, and they were ignored. And people who have nothing to do with no links to Palestine, except unless you accept a religious link. Many of them came from Europe. So they believed that they should have a state of their own in Palestine because it's the land, the promised land. But that
promised
was
by God, no
by
less.
God, exactly. So, but God promised Abraham, although people forget sometimes that Abraham had two sons. He had Isaac and Ishmael.
Well, I mean, we are getting into myths. None of this is historically verifiable. I'm not a religious chap, Edmund. I'm sorry.
Neither am I. So, but this is where what we have. Anyway, they also.
But finish the point about God had two sons. Yeah, that is. Yeah.
And so he promised that land to the two, to his descendants, Abraham and his descendants. Abraham actually,
and the two sons. Name them again.
Ishaq wa Ismail.
Sorry.
Isaac and Ismail.
Isaac and Ismail, and Isaac. The Jewish people
and Ishmael is that
claim descent from both of them or one of them?
No, Ishmael is mostly the Arabs.
Okay.
Although, in fact, you had a lot of, for example, most people don't realize there was a Jewish king of Yemen. Who was so basically he was Jewish, but he was an Arab,
I mean, they are, both peoples have roots in the same region and the same culture, and a lot of Jewish tribes were converted to Islam in the early days.
A lot of not just Jews, but Christians were also converted.
That's correct, yeah.
And many others. So, but the interesting thing here is, I think, is that when you read some of these poets, and we selected some of these, people who are open up. For example, you had a poem called Job's Diary. So basically by a Muslim poet who goes to Job, talks about Job's experiences in a way. You had Mahmoud Darwish, who emphasized, if you read some of his poems, you'll find that he talked about Jesus, he talked about the earlier prophets as well. So there was that mix in a way, that part of that you don't find sometimes in the writings of other poets.
The Hamas certainly is not going to publish this book.
I don't think they would. But I think the main thing is that we wanted to say that the Palestinians are a people like anybody else. They have.
So you wanted this message to go across.
And we wanted this message for people to understand that these are human beings, that they are suffering, that they have paid a heavy price, and that there's a need to know their story. And this is part of what we wanted to do. And then we added other poets as well, including the two very well-known Iraqi poets. Abdul Wahab al-Bayati, for example, was one of them, and Kamal Nasser, another Palestinian poet. We had as well a Lebanese poet. But most of the poets, Fadwa Tuqan, who was in many ways, she was one of the leading feminist poets in the Middle East in the current. And
where is she from?
She was Palestinian, but she lived in Jordan.
I see.
Also. And
I mean, most of the population of Jordan now is of Palestinian origin.
Probably at least a little. They say it's half and half, but probably you have a little more Palestinians. than you do Jordanian.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, there isn't that much of a difference between the people. She wrote, in one of the things her poems, she writes about the tree, tree which has suffered, for example, from storms and was broken, but she felt that the tree is rooted in the ground, in the earth, and it will come out again, rise again, live again, produce again. And she also had written poems which included Jewish as well as Christian as well as Muslim religious figures. And the book so far has, of course, it's too early. We'll have to wait and see how it does. But we have reached, out to some of the some people in this area. Actually, one of the interesting things that I was mentioning earlier, the unusual thing, is that this Daphne Muse, who's the poetess and professor in California, wrote an article also. She said one copy sold for, I think, $900.
Excellent. I mean, you're rising in life.
I wish I have nothing to do with this one. Is $19. I don't think we'll be getting rich.
I mean, what sort of a Lebanese chap are you? You chaps are supposed to be merchants, Edmund. Edmund, what happened to you?
The wrong side.
You fell from the cradle.
Actually, that's my one time I was talking to my father, and he knew I wanted to become a professor. I was a journalist also. And he said, "You are committing yourself to poverty."
You're committing yourself to poverty. So you're a good Christian. You've taken the oath of poverty.
But he said that means you're committed. You're going to be poor all of your life.
Well,
I hope that reaches.
So the important thing, the message of the book really is that Palestinians are a people. Palestinians have a story. That story needs to be heard. Absolutely. And it's a story of struggle and suffering and yet honor and dignity. And there are parallel stories around the world as well. And therefore, this is part of the human story. Would that be fair?
That would be fair. And that would be an excellent review of the book.
Excellent. Very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Edmund has to dash. But we'll have him back. We'll have a number of podcasts with him. Keep listening to FO Podcasts. If you are listening to us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever, make sure you follow us. Make sure you leave us a review. And those of you who have not yet signed up for the Fair Observer newsletter, remember, do so. We publish perspectives from around the world. In fact, we publish more than 3,000 voices from over 90 countries. And we are one of the few nonprofits in an age when billionaires own the media and by extension own the narrative and own you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for now. FO Podcasts will be back. Thank you, Edmund.
Thank you.